in one quiet corner of a suburban New York neighborhood, somewhere on the broad, leafy avenues, 15 miles north of the city, you'd find a 20-year-old house, brick-faced and gently weathered, nestled among maple and sycamore trees. Up on the third floor, in the attic room, Evelyn Parker made her home. That little room, barely the size of a large walk-in closet, sat just beneath the rafters, the ceiling sloping so low in places that she had to duck. In summer, the air thickened and hummed with heat, turning the cramped space into a kind of little greenhouse. Evelyn had always told her family she didn't mind. Evelyn was 67 that year, her silver hair always neatly pinned, her hands still steady and clever. She'd sewn all her life drapes and dresses, costumes for school plays, table runners for the neighbors. Everyone in town knew her for her skill and the way she made every stitch count. But life hadn't always been easy or kind. At 50, she lost John, her husband, a car crash on the way to work one bright April morning. She'd gotten the phone call and rushed to the hospital, but by the time she arrived, his hands were already cold. From that moment, she'd whispered to herself, "I'll have to carry us from now on." She grieved as she raised her son Michael alone. Some years, orders dried up, and she'd sit late into the night by the hum of her old Singer sewing machine, hemming old dresses, patching shirts, mending winter coats. It was never much. Maybe $50 here, $70 there, but it kept the lights on and Michael in school shoes. She never once complained. Eventually, Michael grew up, got his start as an accountant in a midtown office, and one day brought home Susan, a shy, laughing girl with chestnut hair. The day they came to announce their engagement, Evelyn blinked away tears and said, "I'm so happy for you. Make each other happy. That's all a mother wants." When it was time, Evelyn made a gentle, obvious choice. She sold her cozy 2-bedroom condo and moved into her son's house to live with the newlyweds, deciding they'd all be stronger as one family under one roof. She cheerfully picked the attic room, even though it was small and stuffy, and sorted her keepsakes into a single closet. "It's perfect for me," she insisted every time Susan asked, "Mom, are you really comfortable up here?" Evelyn would just smile and nod. "Oh, I love quiet places. And those stairs will keep me in shape." That's how her new life began, her days starting before sunup. Each morning, Evelyn was the first downstairs. She measured out coffee and oatmeal, whisked up eggs, packed 2 lunches for Michael and Susan with neat sandwiches and apple slices, before slipping a change of clothes into her granddaughter, Lily's preschool backpack. While the washer spun, she sang "You Are My Sunshine" to Lily and held her hand all the way to the preschool's blue door. "Bye, Grandma. See you tomorrow," Lily would call, tiny arms waving. That small goodbye and the warm grip of Lily's fingers lightened Evelyn's long days. With Michael and Susan both working, some days there wasn't even a thank you. But Evelyn never said she was tired. "If I can still be useful to my family, that's all I need," she'd murmur, folding towels and matching little socks. Every year, on Mother's Day, the second Sunday in May, Michael brought her a small bouquet of carnations tied in a ribbon. That little gesture, and their shy, "Happy Mother's Day, Mom," filled her heart. She would tuck the flowers into a vase and feel, for a moment, that all her hard work truly did matter. But this year, something felt different. On Mother's Day, instead of the usual flowers, Evelyn found a plain envelope on the dining table at dinner time. She glanced at it, a little puzzled, and tried to lighten the moment as her family gathered around the lasagna. Well, is this a letter this year? But inside that envelope was something that would overturn all those quiet years she built up, all at once. The trouble had started with something very small, a barely noticed feeling that crept up around early April, just as the cherry and dogwood blossoms began to fade from their branches. One evening, after finishing dinner and tidying the last of the dishes, Evelyn started up the stairs to her little attic room. As she reached the landing, she heard it. A faint, unfamiliar noise from the attic. Like soft rustling, then the clicking of plastic against wood. Curious and uneasy, she traced the sound to her own storage nook, the narrow crawl space, where she kept her photo albums and sewing supplies. She opened the door quietly and saw Susan, still in her kitchen apron, kneeling on the floor and silently pushing aside stacks of boxes and an old dress case. "Oh," Evelyn said softly. "Did you need something? Are you looking for something special?" When Evelyn spoke up, Susan looked startled for the smallest moment. Her knee still pressed into the carpet, her hand caught in the act of sliding a storage box aside. Then her face softened into a polite, practiced smile. "Oh, no, I was just noticing we're really running out of closet space up here," Susan replied, her voice light. "I thought I'd go ahead and rotate our things for spring switch the heavy coats. And blankets for lighter stuff. I.S." There was nothing strange on the face of it. People swapped out their closets every season, especially in these older houses with barely any storage room. But deep inside, Evelyn felt a whisper of unease. Had she gone through my things without asking? But, well, we're family. It's not enough to fuss over, is it? She tried to quiet the question, telling herself not to dwell on it. So that night, she smoothed her quilt, checked on her embroidery hoop, and worked to push the odd moment out of her mind. But it was only the beginning. A few days later, while hanging damp laundry in the breezeway, Evelyn heard voices from downstairs, a distant, drifting conversation that wound its way up through the stairwell. The living room door was just ajar. Something about the words caught her ear, making her palm go still on the shirt sleeve she was pinning. "But if Mom moved out sooner, we'd have that room free, and it would make things easier all around, don't you think?" The voice was Susan's, a little sharper than usual, the ending trailing away into muffled uncertainty. She couldn't hear who Susan was talking to. Maybe a friend, maybe Michael, maybe someone else entirely. For a second, Evelyn's throat tightened, nearly letting the hanger slip from her shaky hands. A few minutes later, she headed downstairs, smoothing her skirt, trying to appear casual. Susan stood at the stove, stirring sauce, the kitchen full of the familiar scent of simmering tomatoes and onions. "Oh, who were you talking with just now?" Evelyn asked. Careful to keep her tone bright and conversational, Susan turned aside, her mouth curving into another easy smile. Though her eyes didn't quite meet Evelyn's. "Just one of my coworkers from the office," she replied, a little laugh on her breath. "There's a lot of talk lately about moves and leases. I was just giving some advice, that's all." Evelyn nodded, accepting the answer in words, but noting the hesitance. The small barrier, in Susan's tone. It used to be easier, warmer. But tonight it sounded a bit like a mask. Still, Evelyn scolded herself. "Don't make too much of it, Evelyn. This is just how families are. Everyone needs space sometimes. It's normal to feel a little bit apart now and then." She tried to comfort herself this way. But each night, sleep came harder. A shallow, broken rest that left her head heavy in the morning. Soon, dinner together became rare. "Go ahead and eat first," Susan would say. "I'm running late at work." The daily walks to pick up Lily from preschool ended too. "She's tired now. I'll just drive over and bring her home," Susan explained, closing Evelyn gently out of her old routine. The feel of Lily's tiny hand in mine on the way home. Will I ever walk with her again? That longing lingered, pressing at the edges of Evelyn's heart. The joy she once found simply by being helpful, useful, slowly turned, nodding into the anxious question, "Am I getting in the way?" Then, one Saturday afternoon, as rain clouds rolled by the living room windows, Evelyn's oldest friend Marian stopped by for a visit, a rare treat. Evelyn greeted her, apron tied around her waist, heat rising from the frying pan as she coughed, covering her mouth with a dish towel. Marian watched her for a moment in silence, then shook her head with a kind of quiet sadness. "Eve, you know, you're starting to look like a housekeeper around here." Evelyn managed a small, self-deprecating chuckle. "Oh, it's nothing like that, Marian. We're all family. It works out for everyone." But Marian only shook her head again, her voice low but insistent. "Family is family because there's real gratitude. If no one says thank you or even remembers you're doing it, it just turns into work. You deserve better. Don't let yourself get used to being invisible, Eve." There was a hollow sound inside Evelyn's chest then, something small and quiet, falling out of place. I only ever wanted to be of use. That's all I ever wanted." As the kitchen grew quiet, the smell of dinner and the echo of Marian's warning settled around Evelyn. She felt the gentle ache and longing that comes from realizing that even the most loyal heart can't carry a family all on its own. And in that moment, standing by the stove in her old, worn apron, Evelyn quietly wondered where, if anywhere at all, her place in this house still remained. That night, unable to sleep, Evelyn Parker lay on her back in her attic room, her eyes fixed on the slopes of the ceiling where shifting shadows danced. In that quiet darkness, a single line kept circling through her mind, repeating with a weight she could not shake. If she'd just move out soon, things would get easier. The words weren't spoken aloud, but she felt them. Their ghostly edges scraped at her heart. Was that what Michael and Susan truly hoped? That she would leave, so everything could be easier for them if not for her? The fear of being an unwanted burden pressed heavily on her, and even worse was the ache of knowing, deep down, that she couldn't entirely deny it. Those worries, once vague, soon found a dreadful shape on a day that was supposed to be nothing but joyful. Mother's Day. Sunday, May 8th. All across the country, it was a day set aside to honor mothers. Families came together, kitchen counters filled with the sweet aroma of cinnamon buns, coffee, and rich chocolate cakes. Some children presented hand-drawn cards and pink carnations from the grocery store down the street. For years, these traditions had brought Evelyn tiny sparks of happiness. She awoke earlier than anyone, as was always her way. At 5 a.m., she washed her face, brushed and pinned up her hair until it looked tidy, and changed into a soft cardigan. This was not an ordinary Sunday. Today, Michael, Susan, and their daughter Lily would all gather around the table at breakfast, something that hadn't happened in a long while. As a mother and as a grandmother, Evelyn felt a little flutter of anticipation, a hope for warmth and togetherness. On the living room wall, a crayon drawing waited. "Thank you, Grandma," colored in with bright, wobbly letters beneath a stick figure with a big smile. Lily must have made it at preschool. In the kitchen, Evelyn heard oil popping as Susan fried up chicken, and the gentle sweetness of vanilla hung in the air. A homemade sheet cake, fresh out of the oven. The dining table was set, and in the center sat a small bouquet of carnations, her favorite, and a white envelope beside it. Susan was the one who offered the flowers and the envelope. She smiled, the same pleasant, even way she always did. "Here you go, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. This is for you." For the briefest of moments, Evelyn felt a tide of relief. Oh, they did remember, after all. She reached for the envelope, taking special care not to tear it, as though it contained something precious. Inside, folded in thirds, was a single sheet of crisp paper. Plain white, the sort you might use for official notices. As she opened it, Evelyn's eyes moved slowly over the lines, one letter at a time. To Mrs. Evelyn Parker. Notice of termination of shared residency. Just that. One line was enough to make her world fall eerily silent, as if time itself had stopped. With shaking fingers, she pressed the page tighter and continued to read. This letter serves as notice that, as of May 31st of this year, we would like to end our current shared living arrangement. We ask for your understanding and cooperation. Further information regarding necessary moving procedures will be provided in a separate document. Her vision blurred, not from tears at least, not yet, but from the shock, the sharp sweep of loss. She sat there, wordless, hands trembling over the letter. And as she stared down, Lily padded up beside her, curiosity bright in her small face. "Grandma, are you going somewhere?" the child asked, voice open and trusting. The innocent question squeezed Evelyn's heart nearly in two. Still, she managed, in a way that only a loving grandmother could, to try to smile. She forced her mouth to curve upward, wanting so badly to say, "No, sweetheart. Everything's okay." But no real sound came. Her answer got stuck in her throat. Across the table, Michael kept his gaze fixed on the plate, silent, not daring to meet her eyes. Susan, busying herself with the silverware, wore a look of content relief, as though she had ticked something off her list at last. Why today? Why did they choose Mother's Day, of all days? Evelyn's heart pounded out the question, but it echoed in emptiness. No reply came from anyone, not even in the silence. Mother's Day had once meant everything to her. She remembered handmade cards from Michael as a boy, his voice saying, "Thank you, Mom," and tears of gratitude in her own eyes. How far away those warm memories seemed now, faded like old photographs left in the sun. After breakfast, as the dishes were stacked one after another, Susan approached her quietly. "Mom, I'm so sorry, but, well, finances are just so tight, and these rooms feel smaller every year. We're really at the end of our rope." Michael said nothing. His head hung, shoulders tense. Evelyn wanted desperately to say something, to ease the tension, to claim her right to grieve, but her mouth would not open. Words failed her, caught and stuck like pebbles in her throat. Who's at their limit, really? Is that all I am to them? Just a burden? The ache of that question pressed into her bones. She sat there, in her neat cardigan, surrounded by the colors of celebration carnations in a glass vase, a child's drawing, the tempting scent of cake, and felt more alone than she ever had in all her years. Through heartbreak and loss, through joyful days and quiet nights, she had always believed her place was here, at this table, in this family. But now, on Mother's Day, she wondered if her place had ever truly been hers at all. On the table in front of her, there were still a few leftover crumbs of cake and an opened envelope, its flap resting loosely, as if the news inside had let all the air out of the room. That was her family's answer to Mother's Day. That night, Evelyn Parker returned to her attic room, climbing the narrow stairs with a slow, careful tread, her back still upright out of habit. She lowered herself to sit quietly, legs tucked beneath her on the faded woven rug that had traveled with her from home to home all these years. In her lap was a piece of ordinary folded printer paper, A4 in size, though here it was just another blank American sheet, heavy with unsaid words. She climbed into bed, but sleep would not come. She just lay there, eyes tracing along the grooved beams overhead, the wood grain blurring in the dim light from the single lamp she'd left on. Near her sewing table, she thought about how quickly, "Thank you, so gentle and full," could turn into, "Please leave," hard and hollow. As a mother, as a grandmother, and simply as a woman, Evelyn wondered if she could actually feel something inside herself shatter and fall away, piece by piece. But strangely, there were no tears. Crying won't change anything. Even if I broke down now, nothing would undo what's already been set into motion. So, what am I meant to do next? In the silent dark, the only sound in the attic was the slow, drifting tick of the old wall clock above the door, steady and relentless, carving out the minutes until dawn. And there, in solitude, Evelyn began to set the first stone of a decision in her heart, a quiet resolve that would not be spoken out loud, not tonight, but was all the more powerful for its silence. It was the night of Mother's Day, and the house, for all the meaning that day should have carried, was still so empty it made your ears ring. There wasn't a trace of celebration left. Not in the air, not on the faces. Down in the living room, no one sat among the pillows or lingered over dessert. The bouquet, her annual carnations, had been nudged to the very edge of the dining table, as if someone wanted them out of the way. Used paper plates and forks, crusted with frosting, sat where they were left, forgotten. Evelyn, feeling as heavy as if she were wading through thick mud, walked down the shadowy hallway and stopped in front of her son's closed door. Her heart twisted with a fear she couldn't quite name. Part dread, part wounded hope. She was afraid to ask, but even more afraid to go on not knowing. She gently knocked and then called softly, "Michael, could we talk for a moment?" There was a long pause on the other side of the door. So long, she thought. Perhaps he hadn't heard. But then, with a nearly inaudible click, it creaked slowly open. She found him inside, sitting hunched at his desk, the faint blue glow of the computer screen outlining the tension in his shoulders. His face looked drawn, somehow smaller than usual, and he didn't look up to meet her eyes. "Why didn't you say anything? All this time?" "I was here because I believed we were a family," she said, her voice low and flat, not angry, just so very tired and sad. The words hardly above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut. He was silent for a while. So long the moment nearly passed. Finally, he spoke. "I'm sorry, Mom," he managed, barely audible. "But I don't know what to do anymore." It was Susan. She made the decision. She's been talking about it for a while. That was when a second shadow slipped from the hallway into the room. Susan, her daughter-in-law, stepped forward. Her face was unreadable, a little too blunt, almost rehearsed. "Evelyn, I want to be honest. Michael and I have discussed this for some time. The house, it's too small, and Lily's getting older. We want to have time together, as a family, just the three of us. That's what we need right now. We've reached the end of what we can manage, honestly. So, well, you're not really part of our family anymore." The words landed with a clean, cold certainty, much sharper and more final than even the letter had been. Evelyn just stood there, rooted, the inside of her mouth dry and rough. No answer came. None would come. So what have I been all these years? What was any of it for? The long nights at the stove? The early mornings getting Lily ready for school? The endless laundry and quiet dinners? For this? She felt as though something deep inside her chest was breaking, quietly and completely. There were no tears, just a cold hush, so strong that Evelyn thought even her breath might stop in her throat. From behind Susan, a thin beam of light spilled out from Lily's room, pooling in the hallway. Evelyn saw the silhouette of her granddaughter's small head on the wall. Safe, sleeping, blissfully unaware. I don't want this to touch her. Not the sadness or the bitterness. To her, I want Grandma to always be someone gentle and good. And just like that, in that quiet, Evelyn found her answer. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rebellion. It was something much deeper and calmer. It was acceptance, and a kind of farewell. Later that night, with no announcement, Evelyn returned to her attic room, closing the door behind her without sound. From the back of her narrow closet, she took out her old suitcase, a battered thing painted with faded stickers from her first years in New York. She began to pack, just enough clothes for the coming days, her sewing tools, and a few worn photo albums. There was no rush. She folded the clothes, smoothed the edges of her keepsakes, and took her time. In the gentle rhythm of her work, one life was ending, and somewhere just beyond the dark, she felt the faintest hint of another about to begin. After that night, Evelyn rolled up her heavy winter blanket, the thick, old-fashioned kind she brought from her first apartment, and hugged it to her chest, as if it might shield her from the raw edge of dawn. Beside her battered sewing machine, an old diary lay waiting. She opened to a blank page, tracing the lines with her finger for a moment before putting pen to paper. Slowly she wrote, each word taking shape out of all that grief. When the heart loses its place, a house becomes nothing more than four walls. Below that, she paused. Then she wrote again. It wasn't you who made me invisible. It was me, answering every silent expectation, quietly, until I faded. So this time, I'll be the one who takes care of me. Before the first gray hints of morning settled over the neighborhood, Evelyn gathered her things, her suitcase, the warm blanket, a zippered pouch of sewing supplies, a single framed photo of Michael as a young boy, and left the house. The only sound as she shut the front door was the click of the lock, soft and final. As her family slept on upstairs, no movement, no goodbyes. No one knew she was leaving, or perhaps they'd guessed but chose not to see. So, without witnesses, Evelyn left behind the house she had kept for so many years, the place she had believed would always be home. She stepped into the faded morning light, shoulders back, head high, not hurried, not disguised, moving away from the familiar porch, down the walk, and into her new life. The taxi was waiting at the corner, its headlights shining on the empty sidewalk. The driver, a round-faced man with an easy Brooklyn accent, leaned out the window. "Ma'am, you sure this is the right address?" he called softly. Evelyn nodded, hugging her blanket a little tighter. Yes, this is it. This is home now. Her destination was a small assisted living facility, tucked among the oaks and dogwoods at the edge of White Plains. That quiet place would be Evelyn's new address, a one-story residence with pale brick walls, old fir trees in back, and a sign out front that read, Pine Meadow Senior Living, where every person matters. She arrived on an overcast morning, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened rain. A chill wind tugged at the corners of her blanket as she lifted her suitcase. From the trunk, one end slipped out and fluttered against the cart, the motion oddly gentle, as if the wind itself meant to welcome her. The front door swung wide, and a cheerful staff member, her name tag read Kelly, stepped out, smiling warmly. Welcome, Evelyn. We've been expecting you. Let's get you settled in. But inside, a cold wind still stirred quietly in Evelyn's chest. Have I done the right thing? Was this truly better? Maybe it really was my fault somehow. Her new room was small, about the size of a college dorm, with a window looking out onto a grassy courtyard. Everything was neatly arranged, a twin bed, a small table, a simple dresser, a washstand. Through the window, she could see violets and pansies growing wild next to an old wooden bench. At night, Evelyn lay awake, unable to sleep. She would stare up at the square of ceiling above her bed. The pale paint cracked in places over and over. She whispered to herself in the hush. Was it me? Did I expect too much? Did I give too little? Was I too present? Or not enough? But if letting me go on Mother's Day was truly their answer. What? Was the question I had been asking, without words? There was that envelope, the one meant for celebration, handed to her with a careful smile. The blank way Susan had looked at her. The silence that had settled, heavy and absolute, when Michael passed her in the hall. Each time those memories surfaced, Evelyn's chest ached, pulled tight until she could barely breathe. But curiously, every morning, just as the first light trickled across her floor, a faint scent drifted in from the courtyard. Lavender and pansy blossoms clung to the windowsill, filling the air with their quiet sweetness. One afternoon in the dining room, the sound of an old country ballad, Patsy Cline, maybe, or Johnny Cash came floating in from one of the common rooms down the hall. Evelyn stopped, listening. Just then, a bright young aide, Denise, called out with a grin. Mrs. Parker, do you like old country music? We've got a sing-along group. Want to come join us? She hesitated for a moment, old habits holding her back. But what surprised her was hearing the answer well up in her own voice. Well, maybe just for a little while. And so, because of that little while, Evelyn found herself, just a few days later, sitting among the circle of new friends on a Thursday morning, singing along to You Are My Sunshine, and This Land Is Your Land. It became a habit after that. Every week, every Thursday, she'd join the country classics choir, her voice mixing with theirs in warm harmony. At first, she only listened, content to hum along in the background. Then, one week, when one of the other residents called out, Evelyn, your voice is lovely. Why didn't you ever say you could sing? She found herself, for the first time in years, laughing without hesitation. Come to think of it, when was the last time anyone honestly called me lovely? After that, it felt easier to join in elsewhere. Stephanie's quilting circle in the activities room, the Sunday afternoon garden club, tea socials with plates of lemon cookies and hot cocoa. On a soft June afternoon, when a morning glory she planted in the courtyard finally bloomed a single, bright trumpet of blue, Evelyn stood over it for a long moment, then quietly sighed. Even if you move the place where you grow, flowers still open up to the sun. The way those words sounded, whispered in the hush of a golden afternoon, was like a poem, one only she needed to hear. Soon after, Kelly asked if she'd run a little craft class, just simple things, like pincushions made of cotton scraps, or needle cases for the other residents. Each time someone said, "You're just like a real teacher, Evelyn," she felt her back straighten a little more, pride warming her voice. There, in Pine Meadow Senior Living, Evelyn found herself slowly settling into a new shape, a self that belonged not because she filled someone else's expectation, but because she had chosen, at last, to nurture her own. And as summer light streamed through her window, she realized, sometimes the truest belonging is the one we choose anew, with open arms, even after all the old doors have quietly closed. No one ever told her, hurry up. No one said, that's not enough, or blamed her for falling short. And perhaps most comforting of all, no one ever uttered the final, cutting words, that's enough, you can leave now. Instead, time moved gently, slowly soothing Evelyn Parker's heart. At last, she began to sleep soundly again, nights no longer broken by aching thoughts. The part of her that had believed a single sheet of paper had denied her entire worth loosened its grip, bit by bit, with every passing day. Then, one ordinary morning, standing before her mirror, sunlight spilling softly through her window, Evelyn looked herself in the eye and, for the very first time, said aloud, Evelyn Parker, you're doing just fine today. It was not for anyone else's benefit. It was a word of kindness given straight to herself, a little mercy she'd waited her whole life to offer to the woman in the mirror. And somewhere deep within, another truth bloomed. If I had stayed in Michael's house that day, if I'd tried to cling to the life I knew, I might never have found this new smile. What she had lost was no small thing. It had weighed heavier than she cared to admit. But what had grown in its wake was gentler, more lasting, and quietly warm. A year slipped by. Evelyn Parker settled into her new life at Pine Meadow, senior living, on the quiet edge of White Plains. The worries that had once consumed her faded into the background. Her days unfolded with new ease, quilting on Monday afternoons, garden club every Sunday, country songs sung with friends in the dining room. She had found peace. She had found a fresh rhythm. She used to look back on that day, the day of the white envelope, the chilled silence at the dinner table, and believe everything ended there. But the more she reflected, the more she wondered, was that day actually a beginning dressed up as an ending? Each May at Pine Meadow, a little Mother's Day celebration brightened the halls. This year was no exception. Residents and staff had strung up homemade flower garlands along the walls of the dining room, pale pink, bright coral, lacy white. Lunch was special. Roast chicken, herbed potatoes, crisp green beans, and for dessert, a buttercream frosted cake decorated with tiny sugar roses. Evelyn found herself sitting in a circle of cheerful faces. A soft blue cardigan draped her shoulders, and she glanced over the others, feeling just a pinch shy, an orphaned guest at a family feast. A few tables away, she spotted George, a silver-haired gentleman whose stories had made her laugh since their very first day together at Pine Meadow. They always shared a word when passing on the porch, or a wave while tending the tomatoes in the courtyard planter. Mrs. Parker, these are for you. Happy Mother's Day. George stood before her, offering a tidy little bouquet, white and pink carnations, tied with a ribbon as bright as sunlight. There was a tag nestled among the stems. She turned it over, her fingers trembling, and read the handwritten note. I don't know your past, but to me, you'll always be a true mother of spring. In that gentle moment, a slow, steady warmth unfurled inside Evelyn's chest. The scent of the fresh blooms, sunlight dappling the floor, the low hum of applause as a staff member handed out more flowers around the room. All of it felt like some small piece of the past she thought she'd lost, gliding quietly back to her. She looked up, eyes shining. Thank you. This might be the happiest Mother's Day I've ever had. Her voice echoed just a tad, full of a fragile awe on the edge of laughter, nearly trembling. Once, when her world had fallen silent, she thought her value was gone, erased by that envelope and a few cold words. She believed for a time, maybe, that emptiness would swallow the rest of her days. But now, a single sentence, one person's honest kindness had shown her, you do have a place. There's room for you here, just as you are. At the very end, we'd like to share a few words Evelyn Parker wrote in her journal that spring. Blood alone doesn't make a family. A home is more than a shared roof or a last name. A gift without love becomes a blade, carving sorrow deeper than words. But sometimes, a stranger's gentle mercy can heal wounds a lifetime in the making. To our listeners and viewers, have you ever truly received a Mother's Day from the heart? Or been the one to offer that gift to another? Maybe there's a time in your life when you lost your own place at the table. Or a gift given without a word left your heart in pieces. If you're carrying those feelings, or if Evelyn's story touched something in you, please share with us in the comments below. Your words might just become a lifeline, a little bit of hope for someone out there hurting in the same way. Thank you, from all of us, for listening to the very end of Evelyn's journey. We're so grateful to have shared this time with you. If this story lit even the smallest spark in your heart, please go ahead and press like or share, and help send Evelyn's story along to someone who just might need it today. And from all of us, we hope you'll join us again for the next story whenever you're ready. It means so much to be able to spend these moments together, even just for a little while. May a gentle, hopeful spring find its way to you, wherever you are, and however you need it most.